Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer, unending volume of your own thoughts, you are really going to want to stick around for this one. Today, we're diving deep into verses 52 through 57 of a fascinating text called The Architecture of Thoughtless Meditation. We're going to unpack the specific mechanics of the mind that are laid out here and look at exactly how this philosophy transitions us from absolute noise to brilliant open clarity. Let's get right into it.
Let's kick things off with a totally wild paradox that sits right at the heart of our source material today. Can abandoning all thought actually lead to supreme clarity? We usually think of clarity as, the results of really sharp, hyper-focused thinking, but this text asks us to consider the exact opposite. How exactly does one use complex logic to eventually become entirely free of thought? It's a brilliant puzzle.
Section 1. The Paradox of Meditation.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at the foundation laid out in verses 52 through 54. The text drops this line, "For the sake of meditation, I've merely taught the tenets they prove." I absolutely love the intentional brevity here. The author is basically saying, look, I'm stripping away all the long, drawn-out elaborations. They are focusing purely on the core tenets required for meditation. It's a highly distilled, almost mechanical view of how the mind works. We aren't getting fluff here. We're getting the exact blueprints.
And a huge part of those blueprints relies on one incredibly specific concept, Prajna. Now, according to verse 54, achieving Prajna, which is basically a profound, ultimate type of wisdom, requires a very specific way of seeing the world. The text defines it as seeing no nature of any phenomenon at all. Just think about that for a second. It's like staring at a tree, but actively trying to see absolutely no treeness in it. Achieving Prajna means observing that things have absolutely no inherent independent nature. It's about recognizing a profound emptiness in literally everything.
So how did the text actually prove this? Well, verse 53 builds a really fascinating, step-by-step logical argument. It starts by stating that the natures of all dharmas, basically all things, cannot be not observed. Because of this, it concludes that meditating on selflessness is, by definition, meditating on prajna. The crucial takeaway here is that by focusing your meditation entirely on that lack of inherent nature, you are actively practicing that ultimate wisdom.
And boom! That brings us right back to our central paradox. According to verse 54, there is a literal, step-by-step path to thought-free prajna. Step 1, you take the logics taught. Step 2, you use those logics to meditate on prajna itself. And step 3, through that very process of logical meditation, you become completely free of thought. It's wild, right? The text is explicitly instructing us to use the very tools of thinking, like logic and tenets, to build a ladder. And then, once you climb that ladder to meditate on prajna, you literally kick the ladder away. You become completely free of thought.
Section 2. Thought as Great Ignorance.
So why do we need to be free of thought in the first place? Verse 55 makes this incredibly profound philosophical claim to answer just that. It says, "The character of this existence, born from thought, is thought." That is huge. The text is asserting that our entire existence, everything we experience, the very fabric of our daily lives, is entirely constructed by and born directly from our thoughts. If your existence feels chaotic, it's because your thoughts are chaotic. If you feel trapped, it's because your thoughts have built that trap. Your existence literally is your thought. And here is where the text introduces the ultimate antagonist of this entire philosophy. Verse 56 states, and I quote, "Thought, the great ignorance, makes us fall into the ocean of samsara." Notice that it doesn't just say thought is distracting. No, it frames it as the great ignorance. And it's this exact ignorance that makes us plummet into the ocean of samsara, which represents the chaotic, drowning waters of worldly suffering. Our thoughts are quite literally the heavy weights pulling us down into that turbulent ocean.
Moving on to Section 3, Reaching the Clear Sky.
Verse 56 really sets up a striking visual contrast here. On one side, we have the core problem, thought, which is equated with great ignorance, plunging us into the ocean of samsara. It's heavy, it's noisy, it's totally chaotic. But then, on the flip side, we have the solution, non-thought. This leads to a state of samadhi and is described as being clear as the sky. You are either drowning in the dark, heavy ocean of your own thoughts, or you are resting in the vast, limitless expanse of the sky. It's a night and day comparison.
To really drive this concept home, verse 56 tells us that by resting in thought-free samadhi, which is this state of profound, deep meditative concentration, the mind achieves actual non-thought. And what does that actually feel like?
Well, the text says it is clear as the sky. Just imagine the profound relief of that. The heavy clouds of ignorance part, those churning, stressful waves of samsara completely dissipate, and all that's left behind is pure, unblemished, infinite clarity.
Section 4. The Path Forward.
So, how do we actually get there? For this, the text turns to a quote from the Dharma of Entering Nonthought in verse 57, outlining the journey of what it beautifully calls the victor's children. It lays out a very literal progression. Step 1, you contemplate the true Dharma. Step 2, you transcend thoughts. Now, the text totally acknowledges that this is not a walk in the park. It specifically calls them thoughts so hard to escape. They're sticky, they're stubborn. But by continuing to contemplate the true Dharma, you push past them. Finally, step 3, you eventually achieve non-thought. It is a highly structured journey from contemplation to transcendence all the way to ultimate realization.
Which brings us right back to the powerful, definitive conclusion found in verse 55. Ultimately, the entire architecture of this philosophy, the logic of selflessness, the realization of Prajna, the desperate escape from the ocean of samsara, it all points to this single, profound statement. Abandoning all thought is the supreme nirvana. That complex logic taught at the very beginning, it was just a temporary tool to help you abandon thought entirely. Because only in the complete, absolute abandonment of thought do you find that ultimate supreme release.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over based on everything we just explored. If the very character of your existence is indeed born from thought, and if those thoughts are the exact great ignorance keeping you thrashing around in the ocean of samsara, what kind of boundless, sky-like clarity might you find when you finally decide to leave it all behind? Something to think about, or maybe not think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the architecture of thoughtless meditation. Catch you next time.